Wait about 2 minutes and we'll get things started, guys. Okay.
So he's not at home. So it's something he has.
All right. I'll pass this sheet around. We can get the signing going.
Have a good.
There you go. Name, phone number, social security number, checkbook number, routing number, please.
Call in for the credit card.
All right, well, come on in. If you're coming in, we're going to get this thing going. Got these doors. Thank you, Jane. Good evening, everyone. By way of orientation, you're here for a family recovery group, right? Not the PTA meeting. I say that joke every week. My jokes are getting old, man, I know. If you're here and you're in recovery, you're more than welcome to remain here. But if you share, let's make sure we share in a way that's kind of helping the person, helping the family members who are dealing with this. This is for families to try to gain an understanding of what's going on if they're dealing with substance misuse or substance use disorder. Like Carol or Gay or somebody, if you go get me a drink out of that office, I'll give you $1 million. Payable in installments over time. Payable installments. So we got I see a lot of new faces, so I'm going to go over some basic stuff tonight. I'm going to talk about what is substance use disorder, that kind of stuff. And then I have some topics that I can pull up, but does anybody have an issue or a burning desire or something that they're dealing with they want to make sure that we cover tonight? Anything going on that you want to make sure we go over? Anyone?
I have a question.
Yes.
If your son comes home from recovery and has a ankle monitor on, can he get a job?
That's a great question. The question is, if you have an ankle monitor, if you're on house arrest, can you get a job?
He's not on house arrest. He can go wherever he wants.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah, absolutely.
So there will be people that retire him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would wear pants when I went in if I were him.
Yeah.
I mean long pants. I don't mean pants, period. All right, how do you find a job when you're in recovery? Well, you start with wearing pants. But yeah, I would wear long pants is what I meant.
You just not tell them?
I wouldn't, what would they, if they ask, I guess, if they say you got an ankle monitor, I would tell them, but they're not going to ask that. I wouldn't volunteer that information unless it restricts his ability to get to work. You guys get that? Yes?
The parole officer also has a long list of places that they can go get a job because we're dealing with that with our son. So they'll have a list that you can get them. So they can get a job within 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that particular issue. It really won't come up. It really won't come up unless you go and you have shorts on and they see it. Any other topics or any other things that we want to make sure we cover tonight? Any other questions that you guys have? Yes?
I'm going to see my daughter after she's been clean 60 days. Is there any topics I should avoid or?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's this kind of feeling that family members get where, let me make sure I don't say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing.
Good,
So,
positive visit.
yeah. I don't think there's any topics that you have to avoid. I mean, we have to get honest about this issue. If a person has a substance use disorder and has progressed to this point, it can't be as fragile as you guys saying the wrong thing. It just can't be that way. It's beyond that. Does that make sense? It's beyond whether or not you make the person mad. It's beyond whether or not the person is in a bad mood. It's literally taken on its own life. And I'm going to go over some stuff related to the brain that I believe clearly indicates that, right? But you also don't want the visit to be a miserable experience. So whenever you're dealing with somebody in recovery, just some pieces of advice. Don't make recovery or addiction the only thing you talk about. Talk about the weather. Talk about the football game. Talk about what's going on in their life. Talk about other things. Don't make it all about, what are you doing? How's it going? Did you get a sponsor? Did you get to those meetings? Have you been seeing your therapist? Are you taking your medication? You can check in on that stuff, but you don't want it to be the whole entire experience. You want to have as normal a visit as you possibly can. Now, unless you're participating in some kind of family session, or maybe you're visiting the person in rehab or something, then it's going to be all about what's going down in rehab. But my advice is to just see them and try to be relaxed as much as you possibly can. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What other questions or concerns or topics do we need to make sure we cover? Going once?
If they're home with you, not in like whatever, if they're home with you, so that's my hardest thing, is I will remind him every day, like, did you do this, did you do that, and he doesn't do any of that.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys could hear the question. There's this idea of, you see, the person is around you, you see them, you know what they're up to, and you know that they're not doing their plan. And we have a recommendation around that. We say it's okay to say something about that, but say it once, say it twice, maybe 3 times. Probably not even 3 times. There's a fine line between support and nagging, right?
In a day or?
What's that?
In a day or what time?
No, in a 15-minute span of time.
She's going to be coming home so soon. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, just, I literally meant, like, don't bang on them about it. You get where I'm coming from? Like, it's one thing to say, Rich, did you go to a meeting today? When was the last time you saw your therapist? How you been doing? That's a fair question. I mean, my family cared about me and had a lot to do with but to say it over and over and over again, first of all, it's not going to get the person to go do it. Are we clear about that? And it's only going to cause an argument and a fight, and it's going to shut them down, and it's going to make them not want to tell you things. But the flip side of it is, I do think it's okay to ask. Sometimes you'll get advice and people will say, stay out of it, don't say anything. I don't think that's the case. If that's how you're doing it in your individual situation and it's working for you, continue to do it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I'll use myself as an example. When I got into recovery, I was the breadwinner. I had a great job. Again, remember, the stereotype of addiction is not, there's wide variety on what people look like when they get into recovery. I was very, very high functioning. And so I was paying all the bills, and my wife and I were still together, but there was a lot riding on whether or not I got this right. Do you guys get that? So it would have been very unfair for me to say to her, it's none of your business. It would have been very unfair for me to say that. So I had a therapist, and I had a sponsor, and I had people in my life that reinforced that and said, it's okay for you to know what's going on. But it was never a situation where, like, hey, I felt like she was checking up on me. It was okay to ask, but it was never like a constant kind of thing. And really, honestly, it only came up whenever whenever there was a question on whether or not I was doing it. Here's the thing. If your loved one is doing what they're supposed to do, they have no problem with you asking them what they're up to. We love telling you that we're doing the right thing. Just like if we're if a person is clean, we got no problem pissing in a cup, right? If somebody says I can't go right now, that's them saying it's going to be a dirty urine. Believe me, if we are going to have a clean urine, we'll pee in a cup all day, everywhere.
Yeah, she calls me every time.
Like random people. You want to test my urine? You want to test my urine? You want to test my urine? And the same thing with working a program. If a person is is doing what they're supposed to do, they're fine with you asking. So whenever you ask and they get jammed up and they push back, remember, you want to do this in a way where you kind of are supportive and maybe, nudge them along, but you don't want to do it in a way where you push too hard, because what happens when you push on somebody too hard for anything?
That'll go the other way.
They push back, right? It's human nature to push back. We really don't get talked into doing things as human beings. None of us. It's really not how psychology of change works. We change when we sort of make our own decisions, when our values don't add up to our behavior, or when the concerns become great enough, or the pain becomes great enough. We change, not because anybody talks us into anything. And as you try to talk your loved one into something, and they push back against you, and they say things like, I don't need to go to those meetings, back off, leave me alone, the more they say that out loud, the more they believe it. So literally, while you're telling them, go to the meeting, you need to get to a meeting, you need to get to a meeting, and they're saying, I don't need to go to a meeting, I don't need to go to a meeting, they're digging their heels in deeper and deeper and deeper, which is why you don't want to do it over and over again. You guys got that? It's a really important thing. I think that we can sabotage ourselves in the process unintentionally. And I know why people will ask. You'll ask because you're nervous and you're scared and you want to know what's going on, and you hope that you can get the person back on track by asking. But that's why you only do it once or twice and then sort of let it go. All right?
What if you're dealing with someone like that has like a poker face on stuff, you're asking about stuff, or the whole pee in a cup thing, right? And they're like, yeah, I'll pee in a cup all day, every day, no problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes calling that out is difficult.
Yeah, we don't recommend, so I think urine drug screens, for example, are good. And I think checking up on people, that's okay. But we don't recommend turning it into a battle, and we don't recommend family members becoming like CIA agents or anything like that. We don't recommend tracking devices on people, implanted into people under their skin. That never happens. People over here are like, damn. People over here are like, people do that? Not that I'm aware of, although I wouldn't be completely surprised, right? We don't recommend that you jump in the car and you drive to the meeting location to see if they're there. You don't want to take it that far. That's not going to make or break their recovery. You're not going to get them back on track. It's not that kind of thing. But I am here to tell you, I'm going on the record and saying it's okay to know what's going on. This is a shared experience. This is a shared family experience. Unless you're completely alienated, right? Unless you're at a point where you're detached anyway. So then you might be able to pull back and sort of stay out of it. And what are the factors that go into whether or not you're detached? We've talked about that in here. How long you've been dealing with it, maybe the person's behavior, maybe you're just at a point where you're worn out and you're like, I don't need to know what you're up to. I don't even want to know what you're up to. As a matter of fact, it's better if I don't see it. Can anybody relate to that? You get there, right? So, and that's okay too. You got to remember, when it comes to addiction, I'm going to show us pictures of the brain, right? But it's not about catching anybody, right? It's beyond that. The catching people part happened a long time ago when we first started. If our brain has changed and we are not thinking rationally, it has no bearing on whether or not you know. That's really not what's up. We are using because we're on automatic pilot and we are obsessed to use. So you can't actually threaten us into not doing it or monitor us into not doing it. The reason you use a drug screen is to kind of reinforce your own personal boundaries. So if you had a boundary, for example, of you can't live in my house if you're still using, that would be a reason to do a drug screen. I don't do a lot of drug screens as a drug and alcohol counselor. I don't do a lot of things like regular drug and alcohol counselors. I just don't. I don't do a drug screen. And families always say things like, you know he's lying to you, right? You know they're not telling you the truth. And I always say, well, no, I don't really know, but I really don't care how much they're doing. That has nothing to do with it. What is it about? What's going on in your life today? And how's that going for you? People are upset with you. You just lost your job. We just met you in the hospital off of an overdose. Your mom and dad want to do an intervention. Do you follow me? How the details on what you're doing really aren't important. Your life is clearly out of control. I don't care if you used one time in the last month or every single hour all day today. It doesn't matter to us. How can we help you move this thing forward? We spend a lot of time in drug and alcohol work in our society trying to figure out exactly what the person's up to. I can tell you, if you're sitting in here, they're probably up to some stuff that's pretty troubling, right? And you're probably scared, and that's really all you need to know. Now, if they're in a recovery program, you want them to continue the recovery program. And you want to nudge them toward the recovery program if they're not in the recovery program. Try to keep it almost that simple. If it escalates, we'll talk about what your options are, but if it escalates and you feel like full-blown relapse is going down, then you start thinking about whether you want to do an intervention. You almost want to keep like dumbing this thing down to the most simple terms, because it can be complex and it can be very, very anxiety producing. And if you start to overthink it, it'll be like paralysis by analysis. Maybe we should go over here. Maybe we should go over here. The best one is like when people want to try to find the perfect treatment center. The perfect treatment center where they have treatment for this issue, and they have treatment for that issue, and they have this issue. And, oh, they have equine therapy too on Wednesdays. And to a certain extent, there might be some validity to that for like deep-seated trauma, or maybe like deep-seated co-occurring disorders like depression. But really, guys, that's not, all rehabs are essentially the same. They're going to get you there. They're going to keep you safe. Some of them probably have staff that are a little more seasoned or experienced than others, but they're going to get you in there, get you detoxed, keep you safe, and start you on the right track. Do you get that? This is a process of what? A lifestyle decision for people. Something that you have to continue to work on, and you probably are going to make some mistakes along the way. So how you fit that into your own family is up to you, but those are the general principles. Did you have a question?
I was just gonna add that as a parent, when she was in active addiction, it was so much better for me once I backed off. I took the tracker off her phone, I quit checking messages, because I would get bound up in the chaos.
Yeah, man, I say this all the time. I think about what it was like whenever I was a 17-year-old, like, wild man, and just doing crazy stuff, right? And just doing whatever I could get my hands on, and going out on a Friday and leaving and saying, I'm out. And I was gone, and this is 1986. You can picture me going out the door with my mullet flowing in the wind, getting in my Firebird, listening to Def Leppard. And I was gone. And I was gone for the weekend, and my mom had no choice. There was no tracker. There was no texting. There was no cell phone. If I told her where I was going, she might have been able to call and check on one of my friends. But she had no choice but to do what? Let go and pray. But today, I mean, we can like track our kids. We can text. If you text and you don't get a response, you flip out in like 30 seconds. You get anxious because that means what? The worst case scenario. You can even like get them like literally tracked on your phone, man. You can know where they are every minute of every day. And man, I don't know if that's healthy or not. I don't know if that's a good thing. It can be very, very difficult. You'll hear people talk about disconnecting from that process, even to the point where they shut their phone off at night. Because why? The phone ringing at night makes you jump, makes you nervous. These are all different things you have to kind of take into consideration where you're at on this journey.
Plus,
Go ahead.
You mentioned the word detachment earlier. You mentioned disconnecting right now. I know we're talking about technology when you said disconnecting, but so detachment and detaching with love. I've heard that term before. What does that look like?
So detachment comes out of the Al-Anon tradition, and it was this idea of you don't have to necessarily make a move. You don't have to kick the person out. You don't have to do an intervention, but you can detach from the situation where you're not going to rescue them in any kind of way, and you're also not going to be emotionally invested in the situation. So the classic example of detachment is that, now remember, it came out of an era, guys, when it was mostly alcoholic men and their spouses. Okay, so and it was a period of time in our culture when you couldn't divorce, so you had to find a way to live with this SOB. And one of the ways to do it was to literally emotionally detach from the situation. Teach yourself not to respond. Teach yourself not to care. Step over the person. Now, here's the thing. That is really different when it's parent to child. You guys get that? It's one thing to do that spouse to spouse. That's hard in and of itself, but parent to child, it can be almost impossible. So we don't talk about detachment. We don't talk a lot about detachment when it comes to parent to children. Because it's just, you can't divorce your kids. You can't divorce your kids, and it's a whole different dynamic. Moms, for example, are hardwired to literally save their children. They are hardwired, biologically wired to save their children. So when you tell a mom just detach, I mean, really, truly, when counselors tell moms to just detach, they're lucky they don't get like a stapler in her forehead. It's a really stupid thing to say to a mom. It really is. I get it if you're going to say it to spouses or whatever, and you're going to talk to this wife about detaching from their husband. I can get the argument then, but it's not. That's not the process of what's going on. And even when a mom detaches from a child, it's last resort type stuff, and it's literally like survival.
But
They get to a point where they can't take it anymore, so it's the only choice they have.
when you find yourself, like in my case, in my particular instance, right, Greenville Detention Center, time and time again,
Yeah.
for stupid mistakes brought
Yeah.
on by alcohol, right? At some point, you do. I mean, the last time I was just like, let them sit. I
No,
just don't give a shit.
Absolutely, and I want to go on the record with that. Like, so I think one of the things that leads to detachment where parents are concerned is the amount of time you've dealt with this. You will get worn out from this issue, and you will detach from it, and you'll feel it, and you have to honor that, and you have to take care of yourself. And how will you know? You'll feel burned out from it. You'll feel exhausted from it. When the phone rings, you won't have that like adrenaline rush of like, oh my goodness, what happened? It'll be like, oh my goodness, again. And so what's going on is that the psychology around it is changing. And what we say is you have to honor that. You have to honor yourself. You can't make yourself pick up and do these things. That's your body's way of saying, like, take a break from this. Take a break from this for a while, and maybe go back to it down the road. You guys get that? It's very important. Everything I say tonight, I'm talking mostly in generalizations. I'm talking about this wide-ranging kind of conversation around substance use disorder and recovery and family recovery, but understand you have to take what I say and put it through the lens of your individual situations. We don't believe that there's any one-size-fits-all solution for the things that you're dealing with out there. I'm giving you general principles. And I guess one of the biggest principles would be you're allowed to have a life. You are allowed to have some peace. You are allowed to have some serenity. You are not a bad mom or a bad dad or a bad husband or a bad wife because you don't go bail your kid out of jail.
There can be a lot of guilt associated to that one.
There's a
That's
lot
got
of
a
guilt.
price tag.
There's a lot of guilt associated with it because for obvious reasons, right? You start to say all that stuff that you say, like, did I do something wrong? Could I have done something better? He's my son. Should I really let him sit there? You know, you're going to have all that. But at the same time, that bailing him out really isn't even necessarily the best thing to do. I've had situations where when I've heard somebody went to jail, I was literally like, thank God. You know, because I felt like it was the only thing that could slow the person down. It was the only chance this person had to, like, you know, reasonably, like, stay alive. So you got to take that all into consideration. Now here's something that we believe. Unless the person was violent toward you, or the person was just 100% out of the box in the way he was treating you, maybe stealing your property or damaging your property, or just put you through the emotional ringer so deep, we don't think you have to be tough about it. We don't think you have to be mean. Okay? You can detach, this is the term detach with love, you can detach in a respectful way without, like, you know, without being aggravated toward the person or angry toward the person. Understand that does nothing. The term tough love is exceedingly misleading because there's nothing really tough about it. It's just boundaries. It's just no longer rescuing the person, but you don't got to be tough about it. You can even detach from certain situations but remain connected in others. So, what would an example of that be? That would be, I am not paying your rent. I'm not bailing you out of jail. I don't want you calling me when you're drunk. I don't want you to call me so I can give you emotional validation around your use. I'm not going to do any of that, but if you want to meet once a week for lunch, I'll do that. And we'll talk about the weather, and we'll talk about the football game. Do you get that? You can do that type of stuff. Again, all of it depends on what the person's up to and kind of what their story is. And the top of the list stuff are like, have they been threatening to you physically, emotionally, abusive in any kind of way? Have they stolen your property? Like, there are certain things that if a person does, you want to be like, I got to protect myself. You guys get that? There's another behavior that comes along with addiction that's interesting, and it's not present in everybody. So in the general population, if you just look at people across the board, maximum about 6% of folks will report meeting criteria for narcissistic personality disorder lifetime. So only about 6% of the general population. Among addicted people, it's about 18%. If your loved one is a narcissist, you guys know what I mean by a narcissist? Not like a narcissist, like we throw the term. True narcissistic personality disorder. They don't feel remorse. They really think the world revolves around them. You probably want to think about detaching from them. These are the folks that are 57 years old, still living in your basement and telling you how smart they are. Okay? They are the folks that you want to start trying to say, like, I can't deal with this anymore. You guys get that? And that's why what I say you want to apply to each person's individual circumstance. All right? Any other questions about that? Yes?
Was not about that, but we haven't touched on this before, but we had a situation this weekend with our daughter. She has been doing really well. She had a hiccup this weekend. I have her children a lot, and the situation was she's very high functioning. So I was taking the children home, and she didn't want to get out of the bed, but she was talking, she was eating, she got up
Yep.
and all that, but then she did not want me to leave.
Okay.
I made the decision to leave. I knew the children were safe,
Yep.
but I get really caught up in how to deal with the children and in this
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, so you have, well, this is multi-generational, and this may apply to other people, right? You could have your kids and you could have your grandkids involved, right? And so that is always going to muddy the water. That's always going to muddy the water. And you want to think about it when you're breaking it down. You want to think about, what do I need to do in terms of setting boundaries, or what do I need to do in terms of my relationship with my child, with my daughter, versus how do I need to handle my grandkids? And you always want to start with, like, safety, right? Like, so are they safe? That's your first question in any circumstance like that. If the answer is yes, then you can move up to the next level and say, what do I need to do about this relationship? And I'm going to go ahead and go home now.
Well, my thought was, because I knew they were safe, I knew she had been up, and I thought, well, then she's going to have to get up, and she's
Yeah.
going to have to be present.
Yeah.
So that was my thought process, and now I'm a bitch because I did that, but that's okay. I can
Yeah.
live with that.
Yeah.
I guess I've been a bitch most of my life. But,
Yeah. No, you're going to get in situations. None of us are going to be popular when we do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's, as you set boundaries and you go through this with your loved one, you don't want to expect them to be happy about it. Does that make sense? If you set a boundary with your loved one and they look at you and say, thank you, I literally, like, you should be more concerned about that. Because there's something up, man. Like, her response is right on point, and it's kind of like, and that's all about what? The self-loathing, that's all about the frustration that we experience when we're in the middle of this stuff. It's kind of like coming out to the world. We're pushing it out to the world, and unfortunately we tend to push it out on the people closest to us, which is a weird phenomenon. I ran a residential treatment center for kids, for adolescent boys, and we used to talk as staff about how bad they treated their moms, even though their moms was the only one there. Every week, mom would show up. Every week, mom would show up. Every week, mom would show up. But mom always got the short end of the stick. What is it about? And here's what we learned from talking to those kids. that they felt like mom would be there no matter what. So my mom is going to stick with me no matter what. So, you know, if I go ahead and say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, she's going to keep coming back, which isn't healthy, right? To a certain extent, that's a good thing, but you want to work on, like, where is that boundary, where is that line?
Well,
When do I need to leave?
The question is, where do the children fit into this, and how, I mean, I guess as long as you know they're safe.
Yeah, so it depends on how old are the kids.
7 and 3.
Yeah, they're a little young. You can get older kids where you can get them involved. I mean, we've gotten kids involved. You can have kids involved in interventions. You can have kids involved in family group. 7 and 3 is a little young. You could do, you know, like I would say, like, let's just say for sake of argument, is double digits, 10 and up. Bring them to group. Let them hear what's going down. Maybe let them bring it up. When you get younger than that, what you're doing is you're trying to make sure they're safe, and you don't want to have to, like, shoulder the burden of raising the kids because you want the person to be motivated. Sometimes that's a motivating factor through the process. But it's really a judgment call all around. You don't want to leave anyone in a situation where the person is so intoxicated or so under the influence that they can't take care of somebody. But otherwise, get up with the hangover and take care of the kids. That kind of thing. It's literally like, I don't want to make this okay. I don't want to make this too easy. Does that make sense?
Right, and
Yep.
that's kind of where I was.
Yes, and that's exactly the right thing to do. That's exactly the right thing. Yes.
Are there any groups for children, say preteens, teenagers?
Not really. There's Alateen, but there really isn't an Alateen. I think there's an Alateen group maybe one night a week. We've run some teen groups here. It's hard to get teens to show up, that kind of thing. This group would be fine, especially if it's this format. I'll clean my language up a little bit.
They heard it.
I'm pretty cool. How do you know? We have a lot of teens. We have more and more teens coming to our all recovery meeting. This is where they'd have to come. They'd have to come and they'd have to learn about this.
Do you recommend it? Would that help maybe prevent them from going down the wrong path?
You know, it's a really good question. I think any type of awareness can be helpful. FAVOR Greenville we're throwing our hat in the ring around some of this, like, early intervention stuff. We have traditionally been a recovery organization, meaning that, like, a person becomes addicted, we help them find recovery. We're going to try to get in there with a little bit more on the early intervention vibe. Not the prevention vibe in the classic sense. Prevention is pushback age of first use. You haven't done it yet, let's keep you from doing it. Early intervention is, maybe you messed around with some stuff, maybe you made some mistakes, but let's get you back on track. This is just my take on the world. I believe that has to also be done in the context of a long-term relationship. I just think most teenagers are able to look at you and shut you off. I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of talking to a teenager, and you're talking to them and you know that they are not listening to what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like even if they're polite through the whole thing, they are just simply like, they're not there with you. And so going to a classroom and doing some of those exercises, they're probably helpful for certain people in the group, but there's a good deal of folks in there that need some type of one-on-one. So I do think learning about the brain can be helpful. I do think that, yes.
I'm curious, if they know that they can be abusive to that person and they'll come back, but still they're coming here and supporting them, why do they want to be abusive to begin with?
Well, so a lot of it isn't, there's nothing rational going on, right? So this is beyond, so his question is, why would they start with being abusive in the first place? Why would anybody be abusive to somebody they love? It's not coming from a point of rationality. Remember, one of the things you want to try to make sure you do is don't try to figure it out from your perspective, because you're sitting there as a person who's thinking it through. They're sitting there as a person who's reacting either actively addicted or even if not actively addicted, emotional.
My son will be abusive to my wife, but he rarely is abusive to me, but those will come back.
Well, that's exactly right. You just validated what I said. You guys get that? He said, Rich, you are 100% right. Yep. And so she would have to work on that. She'd have to work on, like, walking away. that kind of thing. Not easy to do, but that's where that would come down. Yes, Carol?
What about a situation where the person becomes violent when using, but doesn't know that he is violent when using? How about if the parent recorded it and showed it to them?
Yeah, I don't like those ideas.
Okay.
I don't like those ideas at all. I don't think that's ever worked. I've had people like record things and send it to me. You're not dealing with somebody who's going to like respond to that. They're going to get aggressive. You start with the basics. You start learning about it. Okay, you as the parents or the spouse, you start learning about it. Then you start saying who else needs to be involved in the conversation. I'll be honest with you, some of the most complex situations at Favor are because the other spouse won't ante up and come in. I'll just be straight with y'all. Like some of the most complex situations is mom is trying to deal with it on their own, and dad won't come in and get involved. He would rather have it out of sight, out of mind. That'll never work. Let me explain. That'll never, ever work. Okay? The person has to understand that all the important people in their life are learning about this, and that they may not be right there today, but they're going to work on being on the same page. They're going to work on what? Not enabling. They're going to work on learning about this issue themselves. So when you start saying, like, what do we do? How do we do it? You know, how do we get the person back? What are the different techniques? What do we do if they're violent and stuff? It's all the basic stuff, guys. You get whoever else, you start, like if you're sitting here by yourself, you say, who else needs to get in here and start learning about this? Sometimes it's not even mom and dad. Sometimes it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. But I'm telling you, as you start to get everyone in that little circle involved, it starts to shrink, guys. Having been on the inside of it, I can tell you, it starts to shrink. It starts to get real small. Your wiggle room starts to change. And the family starts to become empowered. By family, I mean that in the broadest sense, because sometimes it's also like friends and co-workers and stuff. What's that?
Other children involved.
Could be other children involved, all of that. And remember, you're going to deal with this across wide variety of spectrums. Everybody's different. You know, everybody has a different personality. There's no such thing as kind of like a garden variety addiction. You hear people say that. That's not what it's like, guys. Some people it's going to be harder than others. Some people it'll be, easier than you ever would have thought to get them involved. Most people require several tries at recovery. I will go on the record with that. Yes, sir.
Is there any use doing it over a phone if family individuals
It's a great question.
outside of the country? Or?
Yes, I think there is. And so one of the things we do at Favor, and we can make sure we get these, I didn't bring these cards in, we provide like coaching to the families around situations like that. And they can talk you through some of that stuff. Like you can absolutely call somebody and put them on the phone and just talk through it. Because remember, you're not trying to do it perfectly either. You're trying to get everybody sort of moving in the right direction. And just start understanding what your loved one's dealing with. Start talking a common language. Start planning it out. That's the other thing. It's usually not an overnight process either. It's usually like they start planning it out. The other thing is that if you're trying to help one family member, this always comes up. So I got George, and George is out of control, and I need to get his brother involved, Joe. But we're also worried about Joe. Joe might drink too much. We don't care about Joe right now. Do you guys get that? It has nothing to do with the other person's behavior. Sometimes you can even get like where it's a boyfriend-girlfriend, and let's say the boyfriend is still using. Sometimes I've gotten the boyfriend to support the girlfriend go into recovery. So it has nothing to do with all these other people. They don't have to be in the best frame of mind. You guys get that? They don't have to be counselors themselves. They can be all screwed up and still help. Because all you're doing is you're sending this message to your loved one that like, we are working together on this, and it's not going to continue to be the way it was. You don't even have to know what that means. They just have to know that it's not going to be the way it was. We're going to start to change some things. And how that plays out is a wide variety of ways, right? Like in some people's cases, we're going to change the fact we're not paying for your apartment anymore. In other people's cases, we're not going to rescue you and bail you out of jail anymore. In other cases, it's just like, you can't call me when you're drunk anymore. You're not going to be able to cry to me on the phone about how bad life is whenever you're high. We're changing our interaction patterns because what does that do? That changes the system. Remember, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If we just do the same script over and over again, this will go on forever. So you also want to be hopeful because you don't have to be perfect at it. And your goal should be to get the person involved in some type of recovery. I don't even believe that it has to be all about rehab. I think that we overemphasize rehab. I think that TV has made it seem like that's what has to happen. You jump on a plane, you fly off. I mean, I know people who got it, the overwhelming majority of people I know got it without rehab, and I know people who went to 12 rehabs and are still struggling. It's very different for different people, and what we would say is start something. Do you guys get that? Start something. Start some FAVOR meetings. Go back to your therapist that you saw. You know, of course, if you're willing to go, let's get you into detox. Let's get you detox and start to figure this out. Let's get you back to your mental health therapist. Maybe there's something going on there. Let's start this process and get the ball moving, because what we know isn't going to happen is you're not going to be struck sober just sitting on your couch. Right? It's not going to happen that way. You're going to have to do something. And what other questions?
Can I
Yes,
say
ma'am.
one thing, the family thing, and I totally agree on that. Everybody being involved.
Or the most important people.
Well, brother and sister, that's our
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with it.
Yeah.
My husband and I, with our son every day. We live with it.
Yes.
So,
It's a good-
other people,
You don't have to. So I don't know if you guys can
they
hear.
don't understand it like we do.
Well, you don't have to.
Live
You
it.
don't have to go any further than you and your
See
husband.
what I'm saying?
You-
Sometimes it gets me very, very down, like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And then I get to feeling bad, and then
So I think I have a graphic. I'll go.
Yes.
If I pull it up, I'll show you. Like, it's all about who is closest to the person. And so if you look at this scenario, if you and your husband are both on the same page, you have it where you need to be. Now let's say that your son was married. You'd have to get the wife involved too. Do you get that? Like, I don't mean you have to get every single person who knows the person. Sometimes you don't want to.
No.
Sometimes you don't want to, but you will know that there's a list of 2 or 3 people who kind of have to be on the same page. Like, it wouldn't be good if you two weren't here together.
Right.
You know what I mean? You'd have to go home and say to him, come on in here. Yes?
The other thing I did was just send your live stuff to a family member that's out of state, so that she would understand better what's going on. Because
Education can be helpful. A lot of times, remember, you guys are here and you've heard this stuff before, but most people in the world really don't understand what's going on with addiction. They can't wrap their mind around it. Yes?
I was gonna say, what's helpful for me is my coach here. When I start to feel like what you just said, I call Lisa, and she is phenomenal.
Lisa who? Mincy?
Yes.
Shout out to Lisa Mincy in the back of the room. Let's give it up. Yeah.
I've been talking to a coach the last 3 days just on hotline. We haven't gotten one person. Yes.
Yeah.
It
And I
is.
feel that sense of, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah.
And she's already been there.
Yeah. Talking to somebody can be incredibly helpful, right? Like talking to a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, a therapist. We would recommend a coach. This hotline, guys, is 100% ready, and these are trained recovery coaches. Like, a lot of times people will say, I need a coach, and we will get you a coach, but we have a waiting list for coaches, but we don't have a waiting list for coaching services. Do you guys get that? Like, they're available tonight. You can call, and they're trained by me and are supervised by me, and they will take you through options. They will take you through ideas. They'll talk to you about, hey, no, you're doing the right thing, even though you're feeling really, really down about this. You did the right thing. Sometimes you just need to know that, right? You just need to check in with somebody.
A shout out to that.
Yes.
Because we haven't been assigned our coach yet. I've talked to Crystal
Yes.
for
Yep.
4 days.
Yeah.
Every day I've talked to
Yeah.
her.
Well, that's what it's for.
And
Yep.
that is awesome.
Yep.
If no one has it, I was just saying that's a great thing.
I
And-
talked with Crystal too, she's awesome.
She's
Yeah.
Yep. Crystal's not here tonight, but shout out to Crystal. And if you're watching, remember, when you call or whenever you talk to anyone, and we can even take the call line out of it and just pretend you're talking. There's different things that'll be going on for you. Sometimes you will just need to talk. And you probably have experienced this in other areas of your life. When you're dealing with something, sometimes it's just helpful to spill your guts. Agreed? And then other times, you'll have very specific questions. You'll be like, here's what's going on. Can you tell me step 1, step 2, step 3? So either way, you can get this line and you can kind of get the help you need. Depending on where you're at in the process, especially if you're early, I predict you're going to need a lot of like, I just need to talk. You know, a lot of times it's just overwhelming. You feel like you're going to explode. And so you start to get this out, and it's healthy, right? It's healthy rather than stuffing it and having it come out in negative ways. Yes, ma'am.
We have to give a shout out to Carol too.
All right, Carol Kane in the house. Carol, ladies and gentlemen, Carol Kane coming to you live from Greenville, South Carolina. Carol is one of our oldest. I don't mean like.
You really over that $1 million now.
I didn't mean oldest in terms of age. I meant in terms of tenure.
Now we gotta talk about Gabe too.
All right. Yes, Gay's here taking care of all of the intake. So this is we've gone through this before. This is our list of criteria around substance use disorder, and this is as close as you can get to an X-ray for this particular issue. Tolerance and withdrawal are physical symptoms. Tolerance is you need more and more to get the same effect. Withdrawal is when you don't have the substance, you're sick. Craving and preoccupation is an internal process. You think about it all the time. Oh, all day, every day. Can't control. You're going to go out tonight, you're going to have a couple drinks, but you stay out all night. You don't come back until the next day. You couldn't follow your own rules. Can't cut back. You say, I'm only going to drink on the weekends, but you wind up drinking all week anyway. Interpersonal issues. People are angry with you about it. Avoid non-using activities. You only go to the party. Great deal of time. It's a full-time job. Use despite physical or psychological dangers. You've been told if you continue to do this, you're going to damage your liver, but you continue to drink anyway. Use in physically hazardous situations. DUI is a really good example there. Role failure. Over and over again, you don't show up to work. You don't show up to school. If you meet 6 of those criteria in any given 12-month period, if there's a pattern of use, you technically meet criteria for what's called substance use disorder severe. The word addiction doesn't even appear in the medical literature. It's not really a medical word. So if you put whatever the substance is at the front, so it's alcohol use disorder severe, opioid use disorder severe. And this is as close as we can get. This is the diagnostic criteria, guys. And so this is, it's hard sometimes to even convince the person that they're dealing with this. It's hard sometimes to have the family really understand what's happening. If you get a person to sit down and honestly evaluate it, though, you can come to some pretty clear conclusions. Like, I met all 11. It was the first perfect score on a test I ever got. So, but left to your own devices, you talk yourself out of it. You explain it away in your mind. And the terminology that's been put on that is denial or rationalization, minimization, that kind of stuff. You just talk yourself out of it. But this is a way for you guys to kind of know. You might not know all this stuff about your loved one, but it's a difference between like heavy partying, kind of having too good of a time, which a lot of people do, to something different. And you would probably know some of this stuff. You probably have seen them try to quit unsuccessfully. You probably have seen the party get way out of control, unintended. You know, these are almost kind of guaranteed, I will tell you that right now. If you're sitting here, it's probably at a point where that's happening for your loved one. So it's not hard to get to 6 criteria. Do you guys get that? It's not hard to get there. They could benefit from being involved with something. We can all agree to that. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it treatment. You can call it recovery. You can call it coming to a meeting. You can call it improving your health and wellness. They could benefit from doing something. Agreed? Yes.
So earlier you mentioned about people getting assigned a recovery coach. What's your lead time on something like that? How long
So again, we got this available. We did this line for a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is because we wanted to be able to get people with somebody right away. A couple different issues with recovery coaching for people who need recovery. A lot of times people say they want a recovery coach and they don't actually want a recovery coach. So what happens is we get in this cycle where we're chasing people. So we're at about a 10-day lag time right now, okay? That's why we want to use this in the meantime. That's why we want to, so your loved one, if he came to FAVOR Greenville tomorrow, would never have to wait to talk to somebody, to a trained professional coach, a paid professional coach. You don't get a call line where you get an assessment like the next day. You get somebody on the phone that night. This is, however, ironic. This was not created for family members. It was created for people who needed somebody to talk to, but this is overwhelmingly used by family. Family call it a lot more with questions, and they just need to process things. One of the problems with the whole thing is that the family's a willing customer. Would you agree? And we sort of trying to sell something to the person, but they're not really buying it, but the family is a willing customer. So that's what's going on with that call line. That's why the families are so involved. We do see situations, though, once people kind of start to clear up a little bit, they start to wrap their mind around it, where they do start to use the recovery coach appropriately. You got to remember, guys, that this is a process, man. This is a process. And the younger the person is, the harder recovery is. That's a fact. So keep that in mind as you go through. And slips and falls and mistakes, I mean, that happens to all of us. I'm standing here with 18 years of recovery, and it would be, and I went back to school, and I got a master's degree, and I got my life together, and I have all these wonderful things, and I have my family back together, and it would be real easy to look at me and say, like, it just, like lightning struck, and he got recovery. That was not my experience, guys. 6 or 7 tries at this thing. And, concerted efforts ending in what? Relapse, full-blown relapse, all kinds of problems. At the end of the day, my family suffers, my family splits. We're in financial ruin because buying prescription drugs from the pharmacy without insurance is really, really expensive. I didn't buy prescription drugs from the street. I paid cash. And, yep, that's what I said, Gabe. It was not fun. It's a recipe literally for bankruptcy, right? And so split up with my wife, split up with away from my kids. No clue whether or not any of this was going to work out. It looks like this was like a one-shot deal. It was not. So when you're sitting here, if your loved one has stumbled and fell, or maybe they totally blew it, like, understand that is not an uncommon experience. Now, don't get me wrong, it can get much more severe for people, right? Like, there's like any other disease, there's a lot of different manifestations of this thing. But we can't get into this thing where it's like a win-lose proposition. Black, white, you're either doing great or you're doing horrible. You're either cranking out days or you're not. That is not how this works. Think about anything that you've changed. Think about anything that you've ever changed in your life. And you probably made some mistakes along the way. How many of you have known the right thing to do but done the wrong thing anyway?
Oh.
Don't make eye contact. All you guys not raising your hand, don't make eye contact. And if you run into somebody who says that I've never done the wrong thing, even though, I knew what the right thing was to do, I mean, truly, that is a person to avoid. Okay? It's just not true. It's just not true. That's like American Psycho killer kind of stuff right there. Let's be careful. And so this is what it looks like. It's called progression. Happens over time. This is just kind of like a typical thing. It doesn't have to go this way. It could be any substance. But what happens is it tends to get like a lot worse. And then we look over here where like rehab occurs, and we're like, okay, that person got it. They did great. But there's all these other things that went on in the meantime. All these other tries, all these other slips. Now, one of the things I want to caution you about, depending on who you're dealing with and how old they are, we do have a phenomenon going on right now where the progression has been accelerated. People are winding up in treatment much, much earlier than they ever did before because of some of the substances that are being used. So what it does is it takes something that might have taken 15 years before and it compresses it into like a 2 or 3 year period. Yes?
You had a picture of the younger brain.
Yes.
Is there proof that is there long-term or?
No, you make a comeback.
So can that brain recover?
Yes.
It's a question in my mind whether there's permanent damage.
No, there shouldn't be. I mean, there always could be anything that could happen. Maybe if like something terrible happened and their oxygen was cut off or there was other types of damage. But you do make a comeback, and I think I have some pictures in here of how that works. Sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it happens relatively quickly, but you do make a comeback in terms of functioning. The number one predictor of whether or not you'll develop a problem is age of first use, how old you are when you start regularly doing this. You know, and if you can push this thing to 21, it's very rare that a person will develop a problem. I'll be honest with you, if you can get them to 18 when they go off to school, it's you've really kind of like accomplished a lot, because when you're starting at 14 or 15, which is the average age in treatment centers, literally your brain is not equipped to absorb that. It's just, you're flooding your brain with these highly, highly potent chemicals, and it's not even developed yet. And that is something that people need to understand. So if you have, this goes back to this idea of early intervention. If you have kids who are doing this in any given school, the conversation needs to change from don't do drugs to like, y'all got to back off. Can we talk about backing off? Because here's what's going to happen, man. You're going to push yourself to a point where like you're not going to be able to do this again, because your brain is going to change. You're not supposed to be doing this. Your brain is too immature. And of course we know that like out of everything that we hear around opioids and overdoses, still the number one thing going on with kids is what? Underage drinking. You know, so we have to acknowledge that that's part of the conversation. People say that it's a disease that you give to yourself, so I have no sympathy for you, but we've talked about this before. It's no different than diabetes type 2. Diabetes type 2, it affects the pancreas. You put things in your body that you shouldn't. Despite medical advice, you eat wrong, you don't take care of yourself, and your pancreas stops producing insulin, and you experience symptoms, right? Nobody would argue with diabetes. However, everybody thinks that addiction is a choice. You put stuff in your body that you shouldn't, your brain changes, you stop producing dopamine, and you experience symptoms. And this is what it looks like, okay? And so what you have here is chronic substance use. Shuts off the production of dopamine, because too much dopamine flooding the brain is dangerous, so the brain will self-regulate, it will shut off the production. And that means if you're on the left, you cannot experience pleasure, you cannot experience a normal day. It's different than depression. It's not like that. It's a dopamine issue, not a serotonin issue. And so you chase it, and you go after it, and you use it despite clear consequences. And you use it despite the fact that you're getting drug tested at work that morning. And you use it despite the fact that the children and youth worker is coming over, or the probation officer. Because it's not about choice. This goes back to what we were talking about around behavior. It's driven by this absolutely illogical process. Because it's almost as if you're trying to eat when you're starving. Like, so when you need to eat when you're starving, like if I deprived you of food and there was a pizza sitting there, you're not making choices. You're what? You're going on automatic pilot to get this thing. That's what's going on with the substances. It's not making an excuse for any behavior. It doesn't mean that the person needs to be given a free pass. But it does, as a family member, you need to know exactly what you're doing and who you're talking to and what it's like. I mean, my goodness, the arguments that I had with my wife and with my mom. I mean, the epic arguments. I wish they would have recorded them. I cannot imagine the level of stupidity that I was capable of. And the things that I would say to those people in those situations. And I can tell you right now that one of the major issues that my wife and I had to work through in marriage counseling after I got into recovery was the fact that she realized all those times that she thought I was using, and I convinced her that I wasn't, that I was actually using. And she was resentful that I made her question her own sanity. Because I could look her in the eye, and I want you to understand something. You can write me off and say, well, you were always a bad dude, Rich. You were born a bad dude. I was not. I'm a good person. I'm an incredibly kind person. I love puppies. I change diapers as a dad, right? I work in the therapy business. But I'm telling you, man, I would look her in the eye and I would tell her that the sky was purple. And she would say, no, it's not. I can see it right there. It's blue. And I would say, let me explain this. Let me explain how that's purple. And I would go over and over and over again. And I would over and over and over again. And then by the time I was done, it was purple. It was purple. And, you know, up was down, left was right. 2 + 2 = 18. And I can countless and countless situations. Situations where she literally caught me doing things. I got into some other substances along the way because that's just how you roll. At a wedding one night, I'm in the bathroom and I'm using recreational substances that I shouldn't be using, and don't judge me, man. Okay, and so she knew this was going down because she knew the dude that I was hanging out with did this type of stuff, right? So she knew, and we're at a wedding, and I'd go back to the bathroom, and I'd come back out, and it was a type of substance that gave you a lot of energy. So I'd be like, let's dance, and she'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? So she comes back to the bathroom, back to the men's room, and kicks the door open while we're in there. And there's three of us standing there doing what we were doing the substance. And she like, you know, I don't even think she said anything. She kind of looks at me and she just like turns around and storms out. And I'm like, oh, man. And these two dudes that are with me go, just deny it. And I'm like, you're a freaking genius. So I run out, and this is all 100% true story. So I run out of the wedding, and there, you know, she's getting in the car, and like she's driving through the parking lot, and I sort of like I have to like do this like Starsky and Hutch thing over the hood, and I get in the back seat. I jump in the back seat, and we were in Philly, and we had to drive to the Poconos. So it's about an hour and a half drive. And by the time I got in that car till we got home, I had changed her mind around it. Here are the techniques that you use whenever you're trying to do that. The first thing you do is you deflect it onto something else, and you try to get the person or the family member to focus on another issue. In this case, it was, what kind of woman comes in the men's room and kicks the bathroom stall door open? Okay? So what do you do then? Now she's defending herself around that. And then you start making up plausible scenarios, right? In hindsight, absolutely ridiculous scenarios, but it's plausible that I was in there to try to stop those guys from doing cocaine. I mean, it's plausible that that's what I was doing in the bathroom. You don't understand. I've been talking to Darren. I've been trying to get him to stop this. I've been talking to him for about a year now. I mean, I was in there, but you say it over and over and over and over. Now, it's possible that was a scenario, but she knows that's not what's going down. But what happens? I wear her down. I believe what happens in a lot of cases is that family members just say, okay, whatever, because you can't take it anymore. Yeah. You literally can't. And here's the other weird thing. As true as I'm standing here, the more I said it, the more I believed it. In this state of mind, whenever you're not being run by rational thought, remember, rational thought is centered in the frontal cortex. That's what allows us to think things through. This is driven by the instinctual part of your brain. It runs the show. When you're driven by the instinctual part of your brain, you're literally capable of creating a delusion in active addiction. You're capable of creating a delusion. So when you find yourself arguing with your loved one and trying to get them to see the fact that you know for sure they're high right now and they're using it, and they're telling you that they're not, this is why you want to back off and pull out of the argument, because you're literally, like you're not going to get that done, guys. It's not going to happen. They'd have to have, some time maybe putting the substance down. Or maybe the next morning you can get something out of it. But in that moment, you're just not going to get it figured out. And that blows people's minds, man. That's completely unacceptable. This is why society doesn't think it's a disease, because you can't deal with that. The world can't deal with that. You can't say to the world that, like, he went down and he stole this property and he sold it at the pawn shop to support his habit because he's addicted. I understand why people push back and say, no, he's got to go to jail. And I'm not telling you this stuff so that you can excuse your loved one's behavior, but I'm telling you, you're dealing with something other than the choice. You guys get that? You're dealing with something that's beyond a rational decision. And if you're not careful, this is where some of the stuff around codependency comes in, or what's also called enmeshment. If you're not careful, the person will infect you with this in another way. Not by getting you high, but by that thing that I did to my wife. So what starts happening to her is what? It's a parallel process. She starts to lose it too. Do you guys get this? She starts to question her own sanity. She starts to question her own ability to make good decisions. she starts to question her own ability to kind of like trust herself. Because I'm literally taking her for a parallel ride on this. Can anyone relate to this with their loved one? Okay? So you're going on this parallel ride and you're starting to act in ways that are against your better judgment. Just like I am when I'm in active addiction. So when I'm in active addiction, I don't want to use, right? I don't want to use. I don't want to use. I don't want to use. Next thing that happens, I'm obsessed, I go use. What happens to a family member? I can't rescue them. I can't rescue them. I can no longer do this. I'm not picking them up tonight if they get stranded at the bar. I'm not going and getting, and then it happens and you can't resist it and you go do it. It starts to mimic each other. That's been called kind of codependency. I don't know if that's the best terminology for it, but it's kind of like you're literally on this ride together. If they're up, you're up. If you're down, if they're down, you're down. And can you see how that can take you out? That can take you out, and then the other thing is it's not going to help your loved one. This is where the pulling back stuff is important, and being at groups like this and starting to work on how are you going to set those boundaries and how are you going to start to have those conversations. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we are with you and we will help you and we will listen to you no matter what. You can continue to do what you're doing right now, and you don't have to change a thing. But we really recommend that you work on this because this can be like a crazy-making situation to deal with. We talk about this to this day. Like on any given day, she doesn't have Facebook, but if she had Facebook, it wouldn't be a good night tonight. Okay? Because it was a very, very unpleasant experience. And I got to tell you, like the damage that we do to our family members goes beyond the obvious stuff. It goes beyond the stolen property. It goes beyond drinking and driving and having your kids in the car. This psychological stuff that goes on is just as problematic. So that's why learning about this so that you can step back and you don't lose your mind along the way. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Carol?
One crazy thing I did when my husband was using was he was driving under the influence. I was in the driver's seat. He ran into a ditch. So I climbed over him and pushed him out of the front seat to my chair and took his place. So when the police came, he wouldn't get in trouble.
Wow. Yeah.
The next day he went to rehab.
Yeah. So the next day, how? Like just over that incident?
I called, well, yeah, that was the final blow. I called
Okay.
my daughter and
Who else has any questions or anything that they would share about that? Or
I
thoughts?
have a question.
Yes.
My husband and I are new here.
Okay.
This is our first meeting. We're dealing with our son, who's 38. We can't be sure 100%, but we think he is using what? We don't know.
Yep.
At least marijuana.
Yep.
We think that
Take your time. It's okay.
we think that he goes on binges
Yeah.
because he disappears for days. He doesn't text, he doesn't call, I don't know. We don't know where he is or what he's doing. We keep waiting for that phone call or that knock on the door in the middle of the night.
Does he live with you? Is he supposed to be living with you when he's there? That kind of thing?
He's living with us, he moved in with us about 8-9 months ago. He was living in California and he was very depressed, using pot every day, all day long.
Does he see anyone? Does he see any counselor or anything like that?
We tried to talk
Okay.
to him about it, but I don't need that. I've been to counselors before, they're not going to tell me anything that I don't know.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do we get him there? So
Yeah. It's a very good question. And okay, so I don't know if you guys can hear the question. So you have a situation, you have a person who, is obviously up to something. You're not 100% sure what it is. And this is not uncommon. The good news is this is not uncommon, which means that there are ways to get this done. They don't want to do anything, right? Like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go get a help. I don't want to go to a meeting. I don't want to do any of that. So we start with trying to get you to contact a coach, because this is going to take, there's some steps involved here, guys. So like the first thing is to start getting the details worked out. He lives with you, so you got some leverage there. How do you want to go about this? What are the different options on what you can try to get the person to do? So for example, we would recommend, you would negotiate with him around what he could do. He could come to a FAVOR meeting. He could go see a therapist. He could see a psychiatrist. You understand? You start the process moving forward. But the question is, and this is why you talk to a coach one-on-one, because it's very different for everyone in the room. But you figure out, like, what's your leverage to get the person to do it. And it's typically conversations like, now we don't recommend that you go from 0 to 60. Like, I don't recommend you leave here tonight and say, if you don't go get help, you have to leave the house. But it's typically conversations like, listen, we can't continue to do this. It's breaking my heart. You have to see somebody. What? I don't need to see anybody. Why? If you don't see somebody, we're going to have to figure out what to do next. You don't even have to tell them what the next thing is. You can work that out with your coach as you go through it. It might be an intervention. It might be just saying, like, you have to leave. It might be that he starts doing something. Do you guys get this? You don't have to, unless you know for sure what they're up to, and it's 100% like a certain types of substances that might be more dangerous, then maybe you do something tonight. But we recommend that you start figuring out what we call it leverage. What leverage do you have over the person? It's typically things like this. It's typically financial stuff is usually at the top of the list. That would be what? Do you have any control over where they're living? Is usually a really big thing. Do you have any control over, are you paying for college? Are you paying child support? Are you paying for anything that you can get that involved? You can also bring up emotional leverage. You can literally, if you get the person in a room, I've seen this happen many times. People think it's too simple. I've seen where mom and dad sit the person down and like literally like say like, this is killing us.
He doesn't care.
Well, and that may be the case. You'd have to move to the financial leverage then. Sometimes, would you guys agree, sometimes people won't make a move until they have to. Yep, and so.
I got one question on
Yes.
that because her situation sounds real familiar to me.
Yep.
Say that again?
He said it sounds very familiar.
Oh.
You know, you're talking my language, what I've been going through. And what I want to know from you, does your son work? Does he
Yes.
have any income?
Yes.
So you have to take all that into consideration because you're literally trying to figure out how can we like move this along in a way. Sometimes the family has no leverage. I've been in situations where they have no leverage. But many times you have to start walking that out and seeing, and you have to just be honest with yourself on where you're at with it. Remember what we say is, mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. So how that goes is don't write a check you can't cash. Don't make a threat or an ultimatum that you can't follow through on. So do not say to your loved one, you can't stay here unless you get help, unless you're 100% ready to follow through on that. And that's a real important part of it. That's where we think talking to a coach or continuing to come here can help you start to get that sorted out. That's one of the hardest parts of the process. Can I actually do what needs to get done? Because you're afraid and you're scared. And if you were to say like, hey, you can't stay here, a lot of people will do what? Okay, fine. I'm out of here. And they go and they stay with a friend. But here's what we know. If they're using what you think they're using and it's getting bad, they're not going to be able to sustain these living arrangements on their own. And so then it would be, what do you say when they want to come back? No, we're not going to let you stay here, but we'll help you get into a program. Let's look and see what we can help you find. And then FAVOR can help you find things. Yes, ma'am?
I would just say to you that, well, every situation is different, obviously. But when he's telling you that he doesn't care and that doesn't matter to him, 60 days clean, my daughter is apologizing.
Well, he's also, his brain is in that state I just showed.
And she's now saying, I feel so bad for
Yeah.
the things I did.
I've heard that from so many recovering addicts, how awful they were, especially to their mothers. And
It's because of what he said earlier.
I know my son adores me, but he can be so cruel and so mean and so disrespectful and so ugly.
Yeah, what I'm about to say sounds very, very crass and cold, but I'm telling you, this is what And it's so hard to do, but you want to start thinking about this in a strategic way, and you want to start like getting real calculated on what you're going to do. Do you guys get this? It's like a business plan. I hate to say that, but you got to start. You got to start saying like, here's what we're going to do because of what happened with the brain. You know, your son is incapable of thinking things through rationally. You guys all get that? Like, and you got to remember, you are not in that state of mind. So when you're thinking about it, you will be trying to interpret them through a rational brain. And that's like trying to speak English in France. Do you guys get it? Like you're trying to understand where they're coming from, and you'll never do that. So what you have to do is you have to sit down and say, what do we have? What are our assets in this situation? Well, we can take away the car. We can take away the place he's living. We can. Sometimes you don't have much over here because maybe the person's working. That kind of stuff. And then what do they have to play with? And you got to work that out. And we always say something is better than nothing. And what I mean by that is that you may want the person to go to rehab. That may be what you want to do. But we would say if they don't go to rehab and you can get them doing anything, take it. Get the ball moving. Get him. Here's the other thing. This is just the way it is. Like people who say that type of stuff to her, don't say that type of stuff to me or my coaches. Do you guys get that? They don't act that way with us. They know we know. Do you guys follow that? Like your son would know that I knew. If he told me everything was cool and everything was good to go, he would know that I knew he was full of crap. Because why? Because I have been right there where he is saying the same type of stuff. So if you can get them to bridge the gap to a program like this, and you can get them to come to a meeting, maybe they can meet some people and start talking through this. The hardest thing is to get them engaged in any kind of level. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment to her that, and anybody in here, that none of us should have to put up with any kind of abuse from a loved one, no matter what it is. I just totally agree that people need to keep that in their mind. I mean, I did for a while, not physical abuse, but with my son. But it's something that I had to come to terms with, but none of us allow. We have a life, we deserve happiness, we deserve a peaceful home, and we do not have to put up with it. We don't.
So, and when we say that, when you say that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're talking about what? Like let's start with the obvious stuff. No kind of like physical abuse under any conditions, right? Then you start to go down the list, and you have like damaging your property, punching holes in the drywall, that kind of stuff. Then what? What's next? Like emotional abuse, threats. Yes, sir. Verbal abuse, threatening you, kind of like calling you names and everything like that. That's the stuff that you don't remember. You are entitled to your safety as much as the person is entitled to their safety. Yes.
I just wanted to add one thing, and it is abusive in a way, but I understand what you're saying, and I think as a parent, or as any loved one who's dealing with this, but that period of silence is the worst.
Oh, when you can't find them?
That is the worst.
It's torture.
It is. And,
Absolute torture.
and we really haven't talked about that, but that is extremely difficult.
You can't sleep, you can't eat,
Right.
you feel like you want to throw up all the time.
So we've had a lot of people who've responded to that reality by that's one of the reasons why somebody will cut off ties altogether. Well, they'll say like, I can't take your calls because you talked to me for a week and then I don't know where you are for 3 weeks and I die. So people have said I won't interact with my loved one because I can't stand the ups and downs of it. And that's also part of the consideration. That's also part of the consideration. Yes?
You mentioned psychological or emotional leverage. But I think
So emotional leverage, the best example I can give you is a lot of times, and maybe this is with younger people, but I think it happens. I think it could happen in any scenario. The person in active addiction will wind up maintaining contact with people in their family because they want validation and they kind of want to be told they're okay. So they'll make a lot of phone calls to people. Sometimes they'll call while they're under the influence, for example. In my case, what I would do is I would get kicked out of my house and run to my mom's house. And it would be what? Like everything, poor rich. What was I looking for there? I mean, it wasn't about finances at all. I had I paid for everything. Do you get where I'm coming from? It had nothing to do with finances. It was about, I wanted somebody to tell me I was okay. It wasn't even about a place to stay. So it was important for her to set that boundary and say, you're not coming here and I'm not giving you sympathy. It was an emotional leverage, not a financial leverage. You guys get that? Because remember, like, that'll keep us going too. They did a study, and this was in New York City, and the substance was heroin. It was heroin addicts in New York City. 83% of them have daily contact with their mom.
Wow.
Okay? And it's not about money. It's not about money. It's about this other thing. It's this, and you guys have probably experienced that. You probably have experienced. Has anybody ever experienced what we like to call smiling and dialing? Smiling and dialing, when you get a little tuned up and you start calling people, right? And you know, they'll call and they'll kind of want you to sort of tell them everything's okay and that they're doing all right. And if you don't, they'll kind of become aggravated. And have you ever had this happen where you've been with your loved one and you've tried to end the argument, but they pursue you? Right? You literally tried to end it. It's over. We're done now. We're not talking about this anymore. You won. But what? They still want you. They don't only want to win, but they want you to be like, you're okay. You're good.
You never say anything positive to me.
Yeah. And what that's about is the person knows they can't figure this out. It's all that irrational stuff. They're losing their mind. They know they're losing their mind. They know they're off the chain, and they just can't handle it. So they're looking for you to rescue them from the psychological pain, which is no different than rescuing them from the physical pain of being in jail. But don't rescue them from the psychological pain. Psychological pain pushes change. In any area of our life, we change. Literally, it's called cognitive dissonance. It's whenever the tension between our behaviors and who we want to be gets us to a point where we can no longer stand it. So they're looking for relief around the psychological pain when they start calling you and they start pursuing you and all of the above. That's what that's about.
I think sometimes when we're in the middle of it, we don't know what we can do. When they're being verbally.
Oh, it's so hard. Yeah.
Like saying, this conversation's over.
Yeah.
Leave in the room. I mean, something that simple, we don't know. We're just fighting, trying to make them reason and make it right and make everybody happy at the moment. And instead of saying, this conversation's over.
Yeah.
Bye.
Absolutely.
And I distance myself from him, and then he comes at me. Then of course I have to put up with you giving me the cold shoulder and the silent treatment and blah blah blah.
Yep.
And I
Yeah.
And I say, I'm not going to deal with this. Just leave me alone. And then he just goes into the red zone, as I call it. It just gets even more irate because he will not get the reaction from me that he wants.
So what he wants in that situation, he's saying, is cold shoulder is exactly what I'm talking about. I had a situation with a person. I watched it happen. I watched a kid just pop when his mom said, I can no longer talk to you. I just can't talk to you. She had no control over anything to do with the money. You follow me? She had no control over anything. But she just said, she literally, in a very sincere way, said, I have to cut off contact. I can't deal with it anymore. It's killing me. And I just watched him, literally pop right there. And I got him into services, immediately. It doesn't always go down that way, but I'm telling you, there's something about it. There's something about it. We can't stand the way we feel. I got to tell you, there's nothing pleasant about active addiction. There might have been, on the way to active addiction, but there is nothing pleasant about that. There is nothing enjoyable. It is I remember being in the middle of that, man, and it was when you first would get what you were looking for, you'd have this moment of relief. But I mean, it would last that long. If you ever want to know, who's getting prescription opioids at any given pharmacy, just stand there and watch. They're the ones ripping the bag open on the way out the door. You're not doing that for amoxicillin. And so you have that momentary relief. You have that that moment of relief where you're like, okay, I'm good, I got this. But then you immediately start panicking. You immediately start thinking. And I remember being in the middle of that, and I literally remember thinking, there aren't enough of these pills. There just aren't enough on the planet. What? And like, what are you gonna do? No, I'm not kidding. Like literally, like this kind of like metaphysical, like existential crisis around like, what are you gonna do these for the rest of your life? Like, how are you gonna do this? What is going to happen? And so, you know,
You could think enough to make, like you were making.
it was weird. It was just sort of like you'd have what we call in recovery moments of clarity. You have these moments of clarity where it's sort of like you kind of get a glimpse behind the curtain as to what's going down, and sometimes you're able to act on those. Many times you're not because they're just so like few and far between. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. Yes.
Rich, you mentioned intervention. I don't want to get off the track here, but can you briefly explain what happens in that?
Yeah, so an intervention is a very, very specific process, guys. And so we do two different things. We do one that we call family meetings. And family meetings, it's whenever you and whoever is, you know, you want to get involved, sit down with a coach and your loved one. And there is no ultimatums. It's just literally a meeting. Hey, we know you're doing this. We want you to get help. Or else we're going to have to figure out what our next move is. That's a meeting. And intervention, it's the same idea, but you prep for it ahead of time because you're going to write some letters, and the letters are going to have what are called bottom lines in them. And the bottom lines are things like, Rich, if you don't go get help today, you're going to have to like leave the house. We filed a notice to quit, and you're going to have to get out within the next 3 days. And so the intervention is much more intense. And we usually ask you to have at least, you know, we'd like you to have 4 to 5 people there. We'll do it if you have 3. But it's usually mom, dad, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whoever's important to the person. And you meet with a coach ahead of time, and you plan it out. Now, we're trying to figure out how to handle this. And I've talked to the group before, but we've had a lot of problems with interventions. We don't charge for any services at FAVOR Greenville. But I'm a certified Arise interventionist, and when my supervisor found out that we didn't charge, she said, you can't do that. That's not going to work for interventions. You got to charge for something because it's so intense that the family has to have, like, there has to be like a line of demarcation in the sand that we're definitely going to do this. Because we've had a bunch of interventions where they didn't show up, the whole family didn't show up. We did all this prep and nobody came. Do you guys get that? And the reason is because they're incredibly intimidating. You know, so we're not sure how to handle that moving forward. Right now, we try to do more of the family meetings. We're probably going to have to start an intervention service where we'll go ahead and do it. But the difference is it's very, very structured, and it's very much like everything changes today. And you are either going to get help or you're out. I keep saying you're out. I'm just using that as an example. Do you guys get that? Sometimes you don't even have that luxury to do that. But the coach, we have about 5 or 6 coaches who are trained to work as interventionists under me. Are you, Lisa?
I am.
Okay. So I don't think anyone else in here. Carol, you didn't come to it.
I came to it, but I'm
You skipped out. So the way to get in touch with somebody and talk through that is through this hotline. Is to call and like start to explore that. So what I can tell you about interventions is I bet you I've done 200 interventions, but most of them before FAVOR even. I was kind of like a full-time interventionist at a private practice, and you know, they are intense and they are emotional. They really, really are. And there's a lot of prep work, and there's a lot of tears shed, and a lot of times they don't go exactly the way you want them to go. Maybe the person doesn't go for like 2 or 3 days afterward. But what I will tell you is that they're not what you see on TV. Okay? They're not like, they tend to not be that over the top. If the person if they're not successful, it's usually the person saying, no, screw that, I'm not going. It's not, they don't get violent. They don't turn into screaming matches, rarely. But they are really, really intense, and you got to have a commitment from everybody that they're going to do exactly what they put in the letter. Do you guys get that? If you don't do what you put in the letter, you're better off not saying it at all. So,
what sort of success rate do you see on something like that?
So the model we use has it published in like research supported like 93% success rate. It's called Arise Interventions, and so now that means success rate in terms of getting the person into some type of treatment. Right. Doesn't mean that every time they went to rehab. The other thing about our intervention model is it requires the family to commit to weekly meetings for 6 months with the interventionist, which is another reason why we're going to get people to pay for it, because people don't show up for the follow-ups. Here's the problem. Way too often the family thinks that someone like me can fix it, or the rehab can fix it. Way too often. And maybe our industry has sent that signal. We can't fix anything. This is a lifelong process. What we can do is we can set you up with the expertise, and we can set you up with the process that will give you the capability. And that's the idea of the intervention. After the end of 6 months, you literally know how to run your own intervention. And if you got to do it again a year from now, you just do it. Do you guys get that? That's the idea behind it. All right. So this little fiesta is over.
I got one little thing.
Yes.
I'd like to add, and I didn't hear you say it, Rich, but when I talked to Gay, she gave me your stuff that's online and your podcast, and you were talking about your wife, and I listened to a podcast with you and your wife talking about you and all that she went through herself,
Yes.
and it was excellent. So
Here's what it is, recoverycartel.com.
yeah, and I didn't hear you say that.
Recoverycartel.com is my blog, and if you go to podcast, you will hear, I haven't done one of these for a while, but where is it? Boundary setting right there. That's my wife and I interview my wife.
That's what I was gonna tell her, that
Yeah.
she might wanna do immediately.
Yeah,
Start listening to these things on the podcast and also online of him and the people that he has guests of, because it's really helpful.
and if you go to the blog itself and you go under family recovery, so this is all under recoverycartel.com, you can get all the family groups from the past. Okay?
How do we get tonight's video?
Yeah. Pretty soon.
This is on Facebook. Tonight is on Facebook. It'll be put up. My guy will put it up tonight.
Okay.
Chris Freeman, put this thing up. People are asking for it. So he'll put it up tonight, and this has all my episodes on. What this will do is, though, it'll also link you to my YouTube page, and you can subscribe, and you'll get all these. Like, I have hundreds on here, guys. Hundreds of videos on all kinds of different topics. Like some of them are long, some of them are short. And we're doing this much better. We're coming out with a brand new platform, much more sophisticated, much better like production value through another process. But you can go on there and look at that, and that's all about education. That's all about trying to figure out, like, what do we do, where do we go. Your loved one can go on there. I probably do about 3 or 4 posts per week. The video vault has everything in it. Now, at FAVOR Greenville, they have a resource list. I have a resource list for my private practice, and it's kind of like comprehensive. This has some of the stuff on interventions on it. Okay, so if you want to learn about interventions, that's fantastic. There it is. Okay, all right, there it is. So this will tell you about the intervention model that we use, and so you could go on there and kind of poke around and see what you can find.
But I used to just listen to those when we were in the middle of all this, literally during the day. I'd have the volume turned up, cleaning house.
Yeah.
Just the more you can get in your brain,
Better you are.
Yeah,
But Rich is your name, right?
Rich.
In the very beginning, you talked about how much more difficult this is for mothers,
Yes.
especially for mothers, because I have dealt with addiction of a loved one before,
Yeah.
and it was very, 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 very difficult. But it doesn't compare.
No. I mean, I'll go on the record and acknowledge that. I mean, my wife has said that.
Tremendously
Yeah.
painful, and I thought that was one of probably the most painful thing that I experienced in my life until now,
Yes.
with my son.
Yes.
It's a completely different ballgame.
It's a completely different ball game. I will tell you this though, like, you're in this spot, right? So you're sitting here and you're kind of like at this crossroads, and something bad. This is bad, and we get this, but you kind of have a choice right now at this point to what? Like, I'm gonna like give in to this thing, and I'm gonna let this thing like drive me into the bed, and I'm gonna become depressed, and I'm gonna isolate, and I'm gonna slowly but surely like fade away. Or I'm gonna turn right, and I'm gonna learn every single thing I can about this, and I'm gonna pray, and I'm gonna allow myself the possibility that things could be better. I'm not going to sit here and tell myself that I guarantee everything will be better. Or I'm not going to tell myself that everything's going to be better if. But I'm going to allow myself the possibility that things can be okay, and that people do recover, and that as soon as you start to get this support, you start to learn how to handle it. And you can talk to countless people in here who are doing much, much better, even though their kid's not doing great. And that's actually what you want. And I'll say one other thing, because we can have a crisis, guys, that has nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. I spent 5 days this summer convinced that my 6-year-old son was going to die. I drove from South Carolina to Pennsylvania to the Children's Hospital while he lay in a drug-induced coma, okay, that didn't have anything to do with drugs and alcohol. It had to do with respiratory failure. And there's never been a worse week or 2 weeks of my life. Do you guys get that? And the reason why I say this is that terrible things can happen to any of us around any issues at any time. It's how we respond to them. That's all we can do, is respond to them. If we wait until everything's okay for us to be okay, we'll be waiting forever. Yep. You want to say something, sir?
Yeah, it kind of struck me when you talked about the business plan.
Yeah.
One of the things that maybe will help you is, I know we're in a very similar circumstance to you, only our son's 6 years further down the road than yours is. And one of the greatest things that's helped us so much is to develop that business plan.
Yeah.
But you can't come to Favor and expect them to hand you the business plan, because everybody's business is
It's all different. Everybody's business is
so
different.
What we've done is we've picked up little things all the way around. Like, for instance, when you, instead of saying, we're going to throw you out, we said, we just can't participate in this anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's killing us. We can't participate. And he understood that, you know. But I want to offer you one other thing, too. We're at a point right now, and that business plan's got to change as you learn things that work and things that don't work. The plan's always changing. But every once in a while, you're going to hit a point where it's all working. And I'm going to tell you, those days are the days you celebrate. And it'll come.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it right now. But if you work on that plan, get together, learn here the things that do work, you will have those celebration days.
And people get better. I was a raging maniac. I mean, if you talk to people that knew me back in the day, I'm like, Rich is a drug and alcohol counselor? What? That's one of the weirdest things I've ever heard anybody say.
Is that why you had to move to South Carolina?
That's why I had to come, yeah. Because nobody in Pennsylvania, they don't believe it. So, all right, well, let's take a minute here and close this thing with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, we'll see you next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Grab these cards if you need some contacts.